I am Dr. Christelle Langley. I am a postdoctoral research associate in Professor Barbara Sahakian's lab at the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Cambridge. I'd like to thank the organisers of EHDN for inviting me to present our study, Fronto-Striatal Circuits for Cognitive Flexibility in Far From Onset Huntington's Disease, Evidence from the Young Adult Study. Cognitive flexibility refers to the ability to shift attention to select behaviourally relevant stimuli in a given context. Cognitive flexibility is vital for adaptive decision-making in everyday life. Performance on tests of cognitive flexibility is sensitive to disruption of fronto-striatal circuitry. It is well established that the neurodegeneration in both HD and premanifest HD is especially severe in the striatum. In more advanced stages of the disease, neurodegeneration becomes more widespread in the cortex, but fronto-striatal circuits are amongst the earliest to show degeneration in premanifest HD. The Cantab intra-extra-dimensional set shift task is one test of cognitive flexibility. The task consists of 9 stages. Stages 1 to 7 are learning stages that involve learning which is the correct stimulus and simple reversals. Stage 8 is the crucial stage of this task as it requires an extra-dimensional shift or an ED shift. In stages 1 to 7, the shapes were the stimuli of interest, whereas in stage 8, the shifts to the lines. Individuals with impaired cognitive flexibility make increased errors or even fail to complete the stage entirely. Indeed, studies using the IED to assess Huntington's disease have shown impairments at all phases of HD, including in the pre-manifest stage, approximately 10 years from disease onset. 2 studies have examined the resting state functional connectivity and performance on the Cantab IED task. Morris et al. Examined healthy volunteers and found that resting state functional connectivity between the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and ventral striatum was correlated with set shifting performance, whereas Vahi et al. Examined ED shifting in a population with obsessive compulsive disorder. The OCD patients showed impaired cognitive flexibility compared to controls, and this impairment was associated with decreased functional connectivity between the left dorsal caudate and the left ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. In our study, we aimed to establish whether similar fronto-striatal circuits were involved in cognitive flexibility in far from disease onset premanifest HD. The full young adult study cohort consists of 64 premanifest HD and 67 control subjects, closely matched for age, sex, and IQ. For the present study, a subset of 104 right-handed participants who completed resting state fMRI were included. The final sample consisted of 51 premanifest HD and 53 control subjects. All MRI data were acquired on a 3 Tesla Prisma scanner with a 64-channel head coil. Functional images were pre-processed in SPM12. We specified 8 regions of interest based on the coordinates identified in Morris and Vahi et al. These were the left and right caudate, ventral striatum, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. A 6 mm sphere was created at each coordinate. Noise signals were regressed out, and we applied a linear detrending and a bandpass filter. Pearson's correlations between each of the 8 ROIs was conducted and was standardized using a Fisher Z transform. The correlation analyses with ED errors was performed in SPSS 26, and a Benjamini-Hochberg correction was applied. Our behavioral results showed that the pre-manifest HD group made significantly more ED shift errors compared to controls, but there were no significant differences between the groups for the pre-ED errors. These results suggest that the pre-manifest HD group successfully formed attentional sets and achieved reversal learning, but had a specific impairment in shifting attentional control between stimulus dimensions when compared to controls. As such, the Cantab IED may be sensitive to incipient impairments of cognitive flexibility in HD, even far from disease onset. In the healthy controls, we found that functional connectivity between the left ventral striatum and right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex was associated with ED errors. This result provides further evidence for the involvement of frontal striatal networks in cognitive flexibility, specifically between the prefrontal cortex and the ventral striatum in healthy individuals. The pre-manifest HD group showed an alternative circuit, specifically between the left caudate and the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. It is possible that this alternative recruitment may represent some form of compensatory activity that maintains task performance in HD. Indeed, in the present study, many of the pre-manifest HD group had normal levels of performance. However, including the relatively small number of pre-manifest HD individuals with significantly impaired ED shifting, there was a striking positive relationship with functional connectivity of this frontal striatal circuitry, suggesting possible maladaptive rather than compensatory influences. Why such functional reorganization would necessarily be associated with impairments in cognitive flexibility is a matter for speculation. It is possible that the involvement of the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex with the caudate in the pre-manifest HD group represents an inefficient strategy based on increased searching for over-elaborate and hence counterproductive rules or solutions governing performance in the IED task, rather than responding appropriately to reinforcing feedback. However, further research to formally test this hypothesis would be required. In conclusion, the study demonstrated that the CANTAB IED task detects a mild impairment in cognitive flexibility in a pre-manifest HD group far from disease onset. The pre-manifest HD group showed alternative frontal striatal circuits were associated with attentional set shifting compared to controls, potentially representing a form of functional reorganization, which, while effective for the most pre-manifest HD participants in preserving performance, is maladaptive in a small number of the most affected pre-manifest HD participants. The intrinsic functional connectivity at rest in relation to performance on this test of cognitive flexibility may thus provide a potential neuroimaging biomarker of individual variability in cognitive flexibility in pre-manifest HD early in disease progression. I'd like to thank all my collaborators on this project and thank the Wellcome Trust for funding the young adult study. Thank you for listening, and I welcome any questions.